Welcome to Top 30. I'm Richard Bacon.
And I'm Kristen Smith. And here are your top 30 stories in 30 minutes.
The federal government has filed charges against more than 250 people for ripping off elderly Americans. It is the largest sweep of arrests for elder fraud in U.S. history. Attorney General Jeff Sessions said the defendants had stolen more than $500 million from over 1 million people. The scams allegedly take the form of mailing, phone calls or email. The offers promise cash or prizes, such as luxury vacations. The recipients are told they have to send in a fee for registration or processing before they can collect. One woman was so distraught that she took her own life. She had $69 left to her name. The Federal Trade Commission says one company advertising a sweepstakes stole over $110 million. Another sold fake tech support services over the phone. One victim paid over $400,000. The FTC says legitimate contests won't ask winners to wire money before collecting a prize. They also have to explain terms and conditions up front. For more advice on spotting online scams, go to the Top 30 TV Facebook page.
Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel insists the police department got no more than 23 calls about the Stoneman Douglas High School shooter Nikolas Cruz between 2008 and 2017. But CNN obtained records that show at least 45 calls were made regarding Cruz or his family. The agency has not responded to their request to explain the discrepancy. And a Southwest Airlines flight from Salt Lake City to Los Angeles was forced to make an emergency landing when one of the engines caught fire shortly after takeoff. Southwest is calling it a performance issue in the engine and reports no passengers were injured. Now, check out this teapot. A bargain hunter bought it a couple of years ago in England for 20 bucks, but it turns out it was made in South Carolina before the Revolutionary War, and it was just sold at auction for $806,000. Like they say, someone's trash is someone else's treasure, especially when it's an important piece of history.
Let's go to the New York Stock Exchange for our Fox Business Minute with your friend and mine, Nicole Petlides. Nicole, I'm hearing there's big news about Apple.
That's right, Richard. Apple is planning to release 3 new iPhones later this year. One of the models is said to have a 6.5-inch screen, making it its largest version yet. They'll include facial recognition and edge-to-edge screens. The company is hoping these will be a hit among consumers after the sales of the iPhone X have been lower than expected. California has given the green light to driverless testing. The new rules mean fully driverless cars without steering wheels, foot pedals, mirrors will be on public roads as soon as April. The state's DMV director calls this a major step forward for autonomous technology. Almost 50% of Americans support a universal basic income program. The idea here being that workers replaced by robots would get a guaranteed minimum income.
Nicole, how exactly would that work?
The federal government would give checks to every adult below a certain income level. This is all hypothetical, but what's striking here is that more people support the idea. Longtime advocates say we're closer than ever to adopting the program.
Nicole, that's all very interesting. Thank you. Kristen, you're talking about some potential firsts for the Oscars.
Yeah, Richard, some nominees are poised to make history should they win big at the ceremony. 22-year-old Timothée Chalamet is nominated for Best Actor for his work in the film Call Me By Your Name. If he wins, he would be the youngest man ever to win Best Actor. Director Yance Ford, whose film Strong Island is nominated for Best Documentary Feature, would become the first transgender director to win an Oscar. Cinematographer Rachel Morrison would be the first woman to win Best Cinematography for her work on Mudbound. If Jordan Peele wins Best Director for Get Out, he would be the first Black person to walk away with the prize. And should Christopher Plummer win Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal of J. Paul Getty in All the Money in the World, he would be the oldest winner of an acting Oscar at the age of 88. We'll see if history is made this Sunday, March 4th.
Welcome back. Monica Lewinsky published an essay in Vanity Fair that is doing the rounds on social media, garnering much comment. It's 20 years since her affair with President Clinton became public. She says she's still unpacking what happened, was diagnosed with PTSD.
Yeah.
Some fascinating stuff in there, right?
In 1998, when the whole Clinton-Lewinsky thing happened, Monica Lewinsky was villainized in a huge way.
Yeah.
She was the butt of every joke, and I think the public has been far more forgiving of President Clinton. at the time.
That's so true.
Oh, yeah.
And I must declare an interest here, which is she's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And I was emailing her in the last few hours about that article. And we became friends 3 years ago. We went out to lunch, and she said everything then over lunch that she says in that article. And what struck me then is the same thing that strikes me now, that she, as you say, she was this two-dimensional character. She was the butt of David Letterman jokes. She is three-dimensional, she is sensitive, and she's kind of brilliant.
This piece, it talks about the road leading up to the affair, and this quote that just like really pulled at my heart. She said, "The road that led there was littered with inappropriate abuse of authority, station, and privilege."
She quotes Salman Rushdie, the author in this piece, talking about the importance of owning your own story, and she is now owning her own story, and I really think that's a great thing.
And encouraging a lot of other women to own our own story as
absolutely,
well. Here's a common phrase, opposites attract. You've heard it, right?
I've heard it.
Opposite. Do you think it's true?
In a nuanced way, but not exactly.
Okay.
What do you think?
Well, I'm kind of shocked that science disagrees. There's this study after study, and researchers found people who are more similar actually are more attracted to each other. Basically, when you break it down, in the long term, similarities are really what keeps someone together because...
Do you mean common interests?
Commonalities, yeah. Because let's face it, differences get annoying after a while. That bad boy that you were after gets annoying after a while if you're a goody two-shoes.
That's literally what my wife said the other day. When I met you, there was something fun about you as a bad guy, and now you're just a pain. But this, a friend of mine made this observation. I do think this is true, to an extent anyway. She said for a relationship to work, it's not about opposites, but she says you need fizz and still. That one of you can be a little bit chaotic, but the other one needs to be more sensible and calm.
You're the crazy one, Rebecca's the...
Yeah. Fizz, out of control mess.
You're the fizz. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm the fizz. No, I'm the fizz
You're the
too.
fizz. Good,
I'm
right.
totally the fizz. So this would never work.
This would never work.
Never.
This would be an absolute disaster.
It
the
is.
viewers can see. Here's another story. The Simpsons have made numerous predictions that have come true, and the latest is the US men's curling team winning gold at the Olympics.
The USA has won demonstration gold.
It's kind of freaking me out that the Simpsons are predicting a ton of stuff, and it's actually coming true. So just run down for you guys the list of predictions. They predicted President Trump would be president. They predicted Lady Gaga would perform suspended by those flying cables over an audience. That happened at the Super Bowl 51. They predicted Disney would take over Fox. They predicted there would be a smartwatch. I mean, it's getting a little weird.
But the predictions thing might be a bit like a stopped clock is right twice a day. They've predicted lots of things. Like there's the famous monorail episode.
Yeah.
There's monorails in every major city.
Right. So you're just saying. So you could do that. You say enough predictions.
That's
some
what
are going to come true.
Yeah.
Right.
But because we like the show, let's just buy into this idea that they have predicted everything. Okay.
Okay.
Good. 12:30. We'll be right back. Welcome back. A growing number of companies are cutting ties with the National Rifle Association. Delta Airlines announced it would end discounted fares for NRA members. Georgia's Lieutenant Governor Katie Cagle said he would kill any tax legislation that benefits Delta unless the company changes its position. A new tax break on jet fuel could save Delta millions. If you cast your mind back to the last election campaign, parties of all political persuasions were critical of lobbyists. And yet here, Georgia Republicans are saying to this independent company, if you don't reverse your independent decision to back this particular lobbyist, we will change your tax status. We won't support this bill that helps you out tax-wise.
Yeah, and that's why this is so controversial. There are so many opinions around it. This is all part of the boycott NRA movement, these companies cutting ties.
It's quite a lot now, hasn't there?
Yeah, we've got United Airlines, Best Western, MetLife. Obviously, the NRA is not happy about this. In fact, they released a statement saying this is a shameful display of political and civic cowardice. So fighting words there. I think this is one of the first times we've seen a ton of action.
Something happening.
Yes, something happening.
Is it a movement? Maybe too soon to say, but be fascinating to keep an eye on it.
Yeah. All right, well, another big talker, a former stylist for Ryan Seacrest is giving new details about her allegations against him. Susie Hardy says Seacrest repeatedly groped her and hugged her while wearing only underwear. Well, Seacrest denies the allegations. An investigation by E! found insufficient evidence of her claim. Hardy now says the investigation was biased. She says investigators didn't talk to 4 key witnesses that would have backed up her story.
Yes, she did. I think it's an interesting decision by Variety to publish this interview.
Yeah, I do too.
In the sense that it's not an investigative piece. There have been some brilliant investigations by the likes of the New Yorker and the New York Times during the Me Too movement.
Right.
This isn't that. This is just her talking. And she hasn't brought those witnesses forward to go on the record.
Right.
So it's just a grey area, isn't it?
It is debatable as to whether Variety should have released this, because I mean, in this country, regardless of the Me Too movement or any movement really, people are innocent until proven guilty. I think what has happened, with pieces like this, these big old claims are out there, and people start forming opinions when that's really not what our judicial system is about.
No, I just don't really know how you resolve something like this.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
In today's Hometown Stories from Fox 29 Philadelphia, now that the 2018 Olympics in Pyeongchang have come to a close, athletes are already looking ahead to the Summer Games in Tokyo in 2020. One of those athletes is 14-year-old Faith Mendez from Reading, Pennsylvania. Her dream is to compete at the 2020 Olympics in boxing, and she's one of the most decorated 110-pound junior boxers in the country. And she says it's her passion for the sport that keeps her pushing forward. In our second story from Fox 2 Detroit, Governor Rick Snyder of Michigan visited Oakland Technical Campus to encourage young people to pursue careers in manufacturing. Jobs like robotics and welding, which are in high demand but often don't require a 4-year degree. The National Association of Manufacturers estimate there are currently 360,000 manufacturing jobs available. That number will grow to over 2 million by 2024. And many students, like those at Oakland Technical, are getting multiple job offers before they even graduate. In our final story from Fox 9 Minneapolis, winters in Minnesota can get very, very cold, but that hasn't stopped one man from Chanhassen from spending time outdoors. David Wallen bundles up and endures the cold for the sake of art. Over the past several weeks, he's built an ice castle in his front yard. And when the snow melts away, his creativity turns to sand castles in the summer months and then pumpkin carving in the fall, proving the only thing limiting your creativity is your own imagination.
Welcome back. This is interesting. The cost of your plane ticket could someday be determined based solely on who you are. It is called dynamic pricing, and according to the software company Pros, the economic strategy may soon be implemented by most of the popular airlines. Pros Director of Project Management said, based on our backlog of projects, there will be a handful of large carriers that move toward dynamic pricing science. The dynamic pricing gives the airline carriers the ability to tailor fares based on the passenger's flight history. A fare is then created based off criteria like whether you're a leisure or a business traveler. For example, business travelers with a company credit card are likely to see higher fares, but there are currently certain limits and regulations on ticket price points that will have to be overturned in the system before dynamic pricing could be carried out. For now, you're safe to fly at the same price as everyone else. For now.
We still don't have enough legroom though.
True. Indisputably true.
And I'm 6 feet tall. All right, how about this story? Super Bowl champion Chris Long made headlines this year by donating his entire salary to charity. And even though the season's over, he keeps giving back in a big way. Mike Jarek from Fox 29 in Philadelphia joins us now with more on what Chris was doing this weekend. Mike?
Oh, yes, Kristen, look what Chris did over the weekend. He climbed to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. Yes, when he got to the top, unfurled this Eagles Super Bowl banner, and yes, on his head is the underdog mask that he made famous during the Super Bowl run. But he was also there on a mission to help bring, clean drinking water to drought-stricken areas of Africa.
And Mike, I understand this isn't Chris's first trip to Africa, right?
Oh no, this is his mission now, is to bring fresh water to Africa, and he's raised over $150,000 in the process so far.
Well, it looks like Chris is putting the off-season to good use. Thanks, Mike.
I like Mike. A new study from BYU found exercise, particularly running, is an effective way to improve memory. Our memories are stored in a part of the brain called the hippocampus. Memory formation is best when the connection between those brain cells, known as synapses, are strengthened over time. Researchers wanted to examine how exercise might affect synapses in the hippocampus and therefore how well we store memories after exercising. They split male mice into two groups. One group was sedentary, while the other ran on running wheels. Half of each group was also introduced to stress-inducing situations. After 4 weeks, the mice that had exercised, even the ones that had experienced stressful situations, performed better on memory tests than those that remained sedentary. More research is needed to see if the effects are as strong in humans, but for now, it is very good news for mice that run a lot.
Top 30, I'll be right back.
A University of Iowa basketball player purposely missed a record-breaking free throw to pay tribute to a former player who was tragically killed. Jordan Bohannon had made 34 straight free throws. One more and he would tie a 25-year-old record set by Chris Street. Street was a junior on the Iowa team when he was killed in a car accident in 1993. Bohannon is an Iowa native and said he has become close to Street's family. He made the decision to purposely miss the free throw to honor Street's memory.
Obviously, that's not my record to have, and obviously that record deserves to stay in his name.
Street's parents are season ticket holders and were at the game. They gave Bohannon an emotional hug after the game to show their appreciation. You know, in sports, some records aren't worth breaking.
It turns out slacking off in school could have consequences, even decades later. A sweeping study published by the American Psychological Association found your behavior in high school could predict your educational and occupational success later in life. Researchers examined data from nearly 350,000 high school students in 1960. They followed up with almost 82,000 of them 11 years later, and again with about 2,000 of them 50 years later. After controlling for factors like IQ and parental socioeconomic class, researchers found behaviors like showing interest in school, acting responsibly, and having good reading and writing skills tended to lead to better jobs and higher incomes decades down the road. Lead author Dr. Marion Spengler said this study highlights the possibility that certain behaviors at crucial periods could have long-term consequences for a person's life.
Identical twin brothers Josh and Jeremy Salyers met identical twin sisters Brittany and Brianna Dean last year at the famous Twin Days Festival in Ohio. And the rest, as I say, is history. There was an instant connection, and now Jeremy will marry Brianna and Josh will marry Brittany in a joint wedding this August. The brothers proposed together, giving the girls identical double infinity diamond rings, and the four say they plan to live together after the wedding. Josh said, "We kind of always knew that we were never getting married unless it was to twins." Brianna echoed the statement, saying, "Ever since we were little girls, we have always known that there were identical twin boys who were going to marry us one day." And you guessed it, the sisters plan to wear identical wedding dresses.
Homeless advocates in Toronto are blasting the city's commitment to help, arguing they're not moving fast enough and there aren't enough funds. The 2018 budget is set to open 361 new shelter beds, replace 170 of them, and keep 700 other temporary sites open for the rest of the year. But activists say at least 1,500 beds are needed. City Councillor Paul Ainsley said, "I know we put beds forward in this budget, but homelessness is still a huge challenge." City staff points to the hot real estate market in Toronto as part of the problem in funding more shelters for the homeless, saying it's expensive to acquire the appropriate buildings to house them. Taya Greenberg of the Sistering Shelter for Women argued if the mayor wants to do it, he can. New data released from Toronto Public Health reveals nearly 100 homeless deaths were reported in 2017. For now, homelessness in big cities across Canada, like Toronto, remain a pressing issue for government funding.
The car company Nissan has a unique way to showcase a new feature in its electric cars. The Leaf can park itself automatically with the push of a button, so developers put that same technology in slippers. They have 2 tiny wheels, a motor, and a sensor to drive across the floor and perfectly align themselves with the other shoes once a button is pressed. They're on display at a hotel in Japan, and people's faces light up when they see the motorized slippers in action. The car giant also used the technology on some of the hotel's tables and pillows. So I guess these are some of the fun benefits we get as we wait for driverless cars to be perfected. Hey, Richard, what's coming up on our next show?
Kristen, we're talking about the cost of raising kids. Parents are spending more than ever to raise children from birth to the age of 18. Experts have advice on how to budget for a baby, plus how one NBA star is trying to help others by raising awareness about a serious health issue. And we will have the reason why the iconic Johnnie Walker won't appear on some new bottles of scotch. Top 30 also covers more of the day's stories live on Facebook daily, 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern. It's all coming up on the next Top 30.